So you were saying we are now 17th program. Does that mean that we are in the 17th cycle or the 17th time that we've approached? What is 17th?
I mean, it's a 17th program, so you can call it the 17th cycle because if you look at it, we've been going to the IMF roughly about every 5 years, right?
Since
1965.
1965.
Yeah.
But we haven't paid back, so
no, we pay back and we go back to the fund and we keep borrowing, right? So so remember the IMF and World Bank and etc. are multilateral agencies set up by Western world to lend money. Apart from control, their business is to lend money because they borrow so much of money because reserve money comes into the US at 2.5-3%, and then you need a mechanism or a vehicle to lend this money and earn interest. Right? So these organizations are set up in that way. I mean, the US makes money because it's the reserve currency. So they borrow it because we go and place our reserves in those countries at 3-4%. And then the US lends it out to other countries at 8% hybrid. So that's a business model. You can't find fault with them. Anyone would do that. I mean, so that's the nature of the beast. So we are in the 17th program now. And to answer your question, so we went into it. I think we went into it fairly knowingly the consequences of it. That was my biggest disappointment with the then government also, because we were not keen on going down that same path after we saw what happened in 2015. So come 2020, due to COVID, and there was a cash flow crunch. External sector collapsed, tourism collapsed to nearly $100 million from what it was. Remittances were paltry $500 million. So the country was shut down for 6 months, no economic activity. There were a whole heap of other health-related issues that had to be focused on as opposed to the economy, because that was the nature of the global
it was a
process, and so we had to just fall in line. Saving lives was more important than running the economy. So that we went down that route, but there was a silver lining because I know some of our ambassadors who are top-notch ambassadors, great people of Sri Lanka, were in touch with alternative agencies, particularly the Chinese development agencies and the Chinese Development Bank and etc. And there was a standby facility that was almost to be broken. So that was preempted, and we went and declared default status, which was rather alarming and sad for this country because
who took that call?
I mean, if you look at the I will refer to the newspapers and what is published, which is more evident than me speaking from my experience. There were, as I said, there were groups within the government that wanted us to get on to the IMF. And if you look at, I mean, if you go through the newspapers, you will see who are these particular spokesmen who are out there, and there was a multitude of them out there. And they were senior business people, politicians, reputed scholars, etc. So that's against maybe a handful of us tilted the scales, and they created a situation where the overall discourse shifted from us paying out our so-called debt obligations to the bondholders, and it was cut short, and they used the excuse saying, don't pay the bondholders, put money onto medicine, fuel, gas, etc. Feed the people, forget the bondholders. But the consequence of that is dire, and that was what we were worried about. I mean, you can go down that route, that was always an option, but when you default at an international obligation, it is very hard to reverse, and that's what we are paying now. So it went down that route and we couldn't turn it.
Because I always felt, I mean, that we went to the IMF to regain legitimacy.
That is a thought process that comes out through many of the discussions that we have, because they feel that Sri Lanka can't manage its own fiscal affairs. That's a sad story, to be honest. You know, if we are as a country, I mean, there are many corporate leaders, business leaders who manage their balance sheets effectively well. Sri Lanka had a cash flow issue. Cash flow, nothing significant in terms of the balance sheet overall.
There
was, obviously, I'm saying this with some kind of caveat here, because
Yeah.
the balance sheet is not in great shape,
Yes.
right? But nevertheless,
But it could have been
nevertheless,
very-
it could have been,
Accurate.
yeah, you could have transformed it with local knowledge, local skill set, and we have enough of good people to do this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, we don't need a schoolmaster from the Western.
This-
No,
yes,
so
the
that's the
country-
kind of that is the thing, right? The West also create these institutions to control its post-colonial
Absolutely.
control.
And also manage the fallout of the
Yeah,
colonial
and also I
expansion.
feel that the people who govern or the rule, the elite
Yeah.
class, also is no different to these entities. Or they want to stay on top of it. They want to control. So the people on the ground are the ones who are suffering, and the people
Absolutely.
who are in power don't see these repercussions.
You know, I
so
have- yeah.
just to answer Paba's narrative that she just articulated, you're right in the sense that it's like this. These institutions generally have a dominant say in the institution setup itself.
Yeah.
So the so-called business class or the elite class or all this are part and parcel of that institutional framework. So no one wants to be isolated in that whole process, so they just kind of toe the line, and that has happened throughout our history.
Yeah.
And the indigenous or the native knowledge gets subordinated. So we have been struggling, and this battle is a recurrent battle at
Of
intellectual
course.
level,
Yeah.
more than
Of
at a
course.
physical level. It's an intellectual debate,
And to actually change the kind of psyche that has evolved, let's say in the last like 200 years or so, whereas the Western world, the philosophies of the Western world, the literature of the Western world, the methodologies, the medicine, everything of the Western world is somehow better than ours. They make to break this down, like make a kadan down, because this is actually hegemony that has been sold to us through
Yeah.
the colonial mission, right? Now, trying to convince Sri Lankans of how great Sri Lanka is actually next to
difficult.
impossible.
yeah.
It
So,
is very difficult.
It really is. So this is why we keep now a lot of people have only heard of the IMF and World Bank when it comes to a crunch situation. There are so many multiple economic theories in the world, and Zil, you have shared
Yeah.
some of these things with me.
Right.
And the more you read it, the more plausible it seems
Oh yes.
that those will actually extricate ourselves from this current mess.
Right.
And not only that, actually lay a solid foundation so that we never get into a mess
For
again.
sure. Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know where you stand on this, but during the COVID pandemic, all this when happened, we moved to Ibagamo from Colombo also, and then we started something because it was dire, right? You can't go out, you can't grow, and you can't go to your farmland, you can't grow, so there was dire. So we started something called the bartering market, going all the way back to what we learned in history books, saying that
Yes.
Candian kingdom was a self-sustain, So we started this bartering market. Every week we were meeting about 100 women who would bring different things and exchange, and
Yeah.
it was in a micro level. Yes, it worked for a certain amount of time, but then after pandemic ended and everybody went to their garment work and three-wheeler driving work and all of that, it kind of collapsed and we couldn't do it anymore. Do you think in this model, is there space for that kind of micro interventions to kind of support rural communities, support smaller groups? Do you think there's space to support?
In terms of the barter system, or
In terms of the
a-
barter system, and
Yeah.
also make sure that they have food security,
Yeah,
water
yeah,
security,
yeah.
things like that.
So in terms of a barter system at a global level, also we have currently one with Iran. We have, I think, a key.
Yeah.
Uh,
Tea for oil.
tea
Yes.
for oil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's at a national level, much larger.
Might
That
be.
is there. Then we had a rubber rice pact with
Yeah.
China.
Yeah.
So that's also there. At a micro level, whether that's viable and whether that can bring in that sustainability, I have my doubts. Why I say that is, I think we need to empower the local entrepreneurs at that smaller scale, and to do that you need, but I continuously project and request the governments is to get into a production economy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right now, production, for the simple reason of production, is not useful. Coming to Anu's theory of, we have our best, we can, we don't need the best.
Yeah.
I am partially there, but I think we can learn from it, like
Yeah.
what Japan did. You
Yeah.
know, Japan picked key positives from the Western institutionalism and didn't take the rest.
Yeah.
What was detrimental, right? So did China.
Yeah.
So did Singapore as well, right?
Yeah.
If you look at East Asia, the East
I
Asian
think
bloc-
China continues to do it.
Continues,
Like
yeah.
every
Yeah.
5 years they
Yeah.
highlight several industries and
Correct.
focus
Yeah.
completely
So
on it.
the economic doctrine is so important because I think we have to get into that during this discussion, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to move into that.
Yeah.